Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. Today, we're diving into a topic that's really important, especially if you're prepping for the UPSC exams.
Definitely.
It's technology's role in disaster management. This is actually valuable knowledge for anyone, really.
Right.
Whether you're a student, someone who just wants to be more aware, or just generally curious about how technology can, well, make a difference in the world.
I agree.
And to help us explore this topic, we have an awesome expert joining us today.
Happy to be here.
They're going to break down these complex systems and really illuminate why these technologies are so important, not just what they are.
Well, technology is really changing how we deal with disasters, that's for sure. We'll be looking at communication networks, satellites, even how things like social media play a role.
Wow, that's a lot to cover. But before we jump into all those specifics, I think it's really important to set the stage.
Yeah, good idea.
We all know that India has this incredible geographical diversity, but that also means, well, it makes India vulnerable to all sorts of natural disasters, right?
Absolutely. Earthquakes, floods, cyclones, landslides, droughts.
Oh, and don't forget about the heat waves.
You're right. It's a long list. And for a long time, India's approach to all this was mostly reactive. Like waiting for something to happen and then figuring out how to respond.
Yeah, I get it. So what's changing?
Well, there's a real shift happening, moving towards a more proactive strategy. And guess what's at the heart of it all?
Technology, I'm guessing.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
using technology to predict disasters before they happen, to prepare communities in advance, and to make sure our response, if something does happen, is as efficient and coordinated as possible.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about reacting after a disaster. It's about anticipating and preparing for them too.
It's about saving lives and reducing damage.
So let's talk about some of these technologies. One that really caught my eye is the National Disaster Management Services Project.
Oh yeah, and DMS.
It's a huge communication network, right? Connecting the Ministry of Home Affairs, the National Disaster Management Authority, all the way down to district-level units in disaster-prone areas.
It's a perfect example of proactive management. Think about it. During a disaster, those regular communication channels often get disrupted. NDMS creates a dedicated network specifically for disaster-related communication, like a backup system that's always ready when you need it most.
So it's a lifeline for coordinating rescue efforts, sharing information, making sure everyone's on the same page during a crisis.
Exactly. And it's not just the technology, it's also the training, the workshops that come with it, making sure that everyone, from government officials to first responders, knows how to use the equipment properly in a high-pressure situation.
That's great. I mean, having the tech is one thing, but actually knowing how to use it in a real emergency, that's what matters. This whole emphasis on capacity building is really impressive.
Yeah, it is.
But let's move on to something else that caught my attention. The NDMA's Earthquake Disaster Risk Indexing. Creating a risk index for 50 major cities, plus a district in high-risk seismic zones. What's the thinking behind that?
It's all about data, really, using data to make better decisions. If we know which cities are most vulnerable to earthquakes, we can prioritize our efforts, put our resources where they're needed most.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we're tailoring our earthquake preparedness based on the specific risks each city faces.
Exactly. Let's say City A has a way higher risk index than City B. We might focus on stricter building codes in City A, put more money into earthquake-resistant infrastructure there. We might even do more awareness campaigns for the people living in City A. It's about understanding where the biggest risks are and focusing on those.
It's all about being strategic. I like it. This data-driven approach makes a lot of sense. Okay, another area where technology is really taking off is in early warning systems. I'm super fascinated by Odisha's ATARC platform.
SATARC is a great example of how an integrated early warning system should work. It's not just one thing. It uses different technologies, digital mobile radio, location-based alerts, even siren systems. It's all about getting warnings to people as fast as possible. And it's not just for cyclones either.
Really?
Yeah, SATARC covers all kinds of hazards, heat waves, lightning, floods, even tsunamis.
Wow. That's comprehensive. It's like having an alert system for almost anything Mother Nature can throw at us.
You could say that.
And Odisha was really proactive with this. I mean,
Yeah.
they were hit hard by that super cyclone back in '99, right?
They were, and they learned some tough lessons from it. They've really stepped up their disaster preparedness game since then. SATARC is a great example of how seriously they're taking the safety and well-being of them people.
It's fantastic. Okay, we've covered communication networks, risk indexing, early warning systems.
Hmm.
But we can't forget about satellites.
Right.
India has made some serious advancements in space technology, and those satellites are playing a bigger role in disaster management.
They're like our eyes in the sky, giving us this amazing view of what's happening, which is, incredibly valuable during a disaster. Take cyclones, for example. We can track their formation and movement, monitor their wind speeds, predict their path, and issue warnings to coastal communities, all thanks to satellites.
So it's like watching a cyclone unfold in real time.
Yeah, pretty much.
But satellites aren't just for cyclones, are they?
Nope, not at all. They're also used to monitor things like heat waves and cold waves. They can even provide real-time images of disaster-affected areas. That helps us assess the damage and figure out how to get help to the people who need it.
So it's not just about predicting a disaster, it's about getting a clear picture of what's happening on the ground and using that information to respond effectively.
Exactly.
Amazing. Satellites are playing a crucial role for sure. But what about technology that's, well, a little closer to home? Like drones. I feel like they've become a big deal in recent years.
Yeah, they have. Drones are becoming real game changers in disaster response. They can do so much. They can access remote areas, assess damage, find missing people. During the 2013 Uttarakhand floods, they were even used to deliver supplies to stranded communities.
Wow, drones delivering supplies. That sounds futuristic.
Well, it's becoming reality, and it's particularly useful in places where it's dangerous or really difficult for people to reach.
Yeah, it makes sense. Are there any other, innovative things happening with drones in this field?
Definitely. For example, students from IIT Madras developed a drone that can actually help locate people who are trapped in buildings after an earthquake.
Yeah.
It's AI-powered. Pretty amazing, right?
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, we've got satellites, drones. What about social media? I mean, it's not exactly the first thing that comes to mind when you think about disaster management.
You'd be surprised. Social media is actually becoming an important part of the equation. Remember the Chennai floods in 2015?
Yeah.
That was a really big moment. People were using Twitter to share real-time updates, coordinate rescue efforts, spread information about relief camps, even raise money for those affected. It was really powerful.
Wow, I remember hearing about that. So this platform that's known for cat videos and, well, whatever else is trending, it can actually be a lifeline during a crisis.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to see how it all played out. And now social media companies are actually building in features specifically for disasters. Like Facebook has a safety check feature where people can mark themselves as safe during an emergency.
That's smart. It must be reassuring for friends and family.
Yeah.
So social media is good for sharing information, raising money, even coordinating volunteers. It's becoming a real tool for disaster management.
It is. It's becoming more and more important every year.
Okay, so far we've talked about satellites, drones, social media. Now, what about GIS and GPS? I mean, we use those for things like navigation and maps every day, but they must have some serious potential in disaster management too, right?
Oh, absolutely. GIS, that stands for Geographic Information Systems, allows us to create these really detailed maps with tons of information. You can map population density, critical infrastructure, evacuation routes. You can even map out where emergency shelters are. All this information is super valuable for planning and responding to disasters.
So it's like taking a normal map and adding all these layers of information specifically for disaster management.
Exactly. And then GPS helps us pinpoint the exact location of people, resources, hazards. That's vital for coordinating rescues, tracking relief supplies, even assessing the impact of a disaster in specific locations.
It sounds incredibly useful. I was actually reading about how Tamil Nadu created this web GIS system called TNS Mart. They worked with ISRO on it, and they're using it for all kinds of things, from monitoring to resource allocation to damage assessment.
That's a great example of how states are using GIS, and Karnataka has its own system that uses GPS for disaster monitoring. And the Indian government is really pushing for the use of the Internet of Things, or IoT, to make disaster management even more efficient.
The Internet of Things is a phrase I hear everywhere these days. But how does that fit into all of this?
Well, imagine a network of sensors spread out across a city or a region, constantly collecting data. Things like rainfall, water levels, air quality, even the structural integrity of buildings.
Yeah.
That's what IoT is all about, connecting all these everyday objects to the internet and using that data to make better decisions.
So you're talking about all these interconnected devices that can give us real-time information about potential hazards, help us anticipate disasters before they even happen.
That's the idea. And we can feed all this data into these predictive models that can send early warnings, even trigger automated responses and guide evacuations. It's about using technology to build smarter and more resilient infrastructure.
That's incredible. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
Communication networks, satellites, drones, social media, GIS, even the Internet of Things. It's clear that technology is playing a bigger and bigger role in how we deal with disasters.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much to talk about.
There is. But before we go any further, let's take a quick moment to digest everything we've learned so far. We'll be back in a bit to continue our deep dive into technology's role in disaster management. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into technology's role in disaster management. Before the break, we were talking about the Internet of Things and how it's helping us build smarter, more resilient infrastructure.
All those interconnected devices giving us real-time data, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But with all this focus on cutting-edge tech, sometimes I wonder if we're overlooking the simple stuff. The tools that everyone has access to.
Oh, I totally agree. Sometimes it's those basic technologies that make the biggest difference, especially when they're easy to use and everyone can access them. Remember the Chennai floods back in 2015?
Yeah.
Twitter wasn't designed for disaster response, but it became a lifeline for people, sharing information, coordinating relief efforts, even finding missing loved ones.
It's a good reminder that innovation isn't always about fancy gadgets and complex algorithms.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about finding creative solutions with what we already have. But it highlights something really important: access and digital literacy. I mean, what good are these amazing tools if people don't know how to use them?
Or if they can't even access them in the first place. It's like we can build the most advanced systems in the world, but if they don't reach the people who need them, it's all for nothing.
Exactly. That's why things like digital literacy programs are so crucial, teaching people how to use these tools, making sure everyone has access. It's about empowering people to use technology to stay safe.
It's like creating a digital safety net that everyone knows how to use. So we've talked about all these technologies, but what about AI? I mean, it's everywhere these days. What role does artificial intelligence play in disaster management?
AI is changing everything so fast. It's analyzing huge amounts of data, looking for patterns, predicting risks. Imagine an AI system that can go through weather data, social media posts, even news reports, and pick up on those early warning signs of a flood or a landslide.
It's like having a super smart analyst working 24/7, just looking for potential threats.
Exactly. AI can also help guide rescue efforts. There are even AI-powered robots being developed that can navigate through rubble after an earthquake, searching for survivors, even administering first aid.
Rescue robots, wow. It sounds like science fiction, but it's amazing to think that this could be a reality soon.
What about all the data we're generating these days? All those sensors, cameras, social media posts? It seems like there's so much information out there.
That's where big data analytics comes in. We can analyze all that data, get insights into how disasters work, where the vulnerabilities are. That helps us make better decisions about how to prepare, how to respond, how to recover.
It's like having a giant puzzle, and we're using AI and big data to put all the pieces together, getting a clearer picture of how disasters unfold and how we can reduce their impact.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about reacting to disasters anymore. It's about using data to build resilience, to create communities and infrastructure that can withstand those shocks. So it's about moving from a reactive to a preventative and preparedness-focused approach. But it's not just about technology, right? It's about people, too.
Oh, absolutely. Disaster management is, at its core, a human endeavor. Technology is just a tool. But it's the human element, the compassion, the ingenuity that really makes a difference.
I was reading about some villages in disaster-prone areas that are using mobile apps to connect with each other during emergencies. It's like a hyperlocal social network specifically designed for disaster response.
I love hearing about that. It's such a great example of how people are taking technology into their own hands, empowering themselves and their communities. It's not just about responding to disasters, it's about building that community resilience.
It's amazing to see how people are coming together, using tech to build stronger connections and support each other, especially during those times of crisis.
It highlights the importance of community-based disaster management. And technology can play a big role in helping those communities communicate and collaborate. So we've got these advanced things like AI and big data, but even simple mobile apps can be powerful, especially when they're designed for the specific needs of a community.
It's all about finding the right tool for the job. And with technology changing so quickly, we have to constantly adapt and innovate.
That's what keeps things interesting. There are always new discoveries, new ways to use technology to save lives and make a real difference.
And that's what it's all about, right? Using our knowledge and our creativity to create a safer, more resilient future.
Exactly. Well said.
We've covered a lot of ground, from those high-tech solutions to the power of simple, accessible tools. India has come a long way in its approach to disaster management. The National Disaster Management Authority, those early warning systems, all the ways technology is being integrated into disaster response. It's clear India is becoming a leader in this field.
It's remarkable progress. And it really shows the resilience of the Indian people, their determination to find solutions and build a safer future. But there's always more work to do.
We can't just sit back and relax, right? We have to keep learning, keep innovating, keep pushing forward. Disasters aren't going away, so we need to stay ahead of the game.
Absolutely. We need to keep investing in research and development, in capacity building, bringing together the best minds from everywhere. Government, universities, private companies, even local communities. Finding solutions that work.
It's a team effort, for sure. We all have a role to play in building a safer and more resilient world. But our deep dive isn't over yet. When we come back, we'll look at some specific case studies, real-world examples of how these technologies are making a difference. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We spent this whole episode talking about how technology is changing the way we manage disasters, especially here in India.
Right. And now it's time to see how those technologies work in the real world. Real world examples, they really bring those innovations to life.
Absolutely. And I'd love to start with Uttarakhand. It's a beautiful state, but prone to landslides and flash floods, especially during the monsoon season.
Oh, definitely. The terrain makes it so vulnerable. But they've actually implemented a really cool early warning system, specifically for landslides and flash floods.
How does it work? Is it anything like that SATARC platform in Odisha?
Well, there are similarities, but this one's even more focused, more hyperlocal, you could say. They have all these sensors placed in high-risk areas, and those sensors are constantly monitoring things like rainfall, soil moisture, even those tiny vibrations that might indicate, ground instability.
So it's like they have their finger on the pulse of the mountains. But sensors alone don't save lives, right? How do they actually get those warnings out to people?
That's where the connection with the community comes in. When the sensors detect something critical, an alert goes out automatically through text messages, sirens in villages, even public announcements over loudspeakers.
So they're using multiple ways to make sure everyone gets the message, even in remote areas where, connectivity might not be great.
Exactly. And it's not just about the technology itself. They've also put a lot of effort into training local volunteers, teaching them how to be first responders, giving them basic rescue equipment. They even do drills to make sure everyone knows what to do when an alert comes in.
So it's this combination of high-tech monitoring and, grassroots preparedness. Has it been effective?
It has. Since they started using this system, they've seen a big decrease in casualties and property damage from landslides and flash floods. It shows that technology, when it's combined with community action and proactive planning, can really make a difference.
That's fantastic to hear. Gives me hope, knowing that we can take steps to protect those vulnerable communities.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. What about cyclones? India's coastline is massive, and those storms can be devastating.
Oh yeah, cyclones are a major threat, and they've caused so much damage over the years. But India's come a long way in terms of preparedness, and technology has played a huge role in that.
I remember that super cyclone in Odisha back in 1999. It was just awful. But Odisha has really turned things around since then. They're like a model for cyclone preparedness now.
They've done an amazing job, and technology's been a big part of their success. Remember those satellites we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
They're crucial for tracking cyclones, giving us real-time data on their formation, wind speeds, and projected paths.
Right. Those real-time updates are so important.
Absolutely. And we feed all that data into these sophisticated weather models, which allows us to issue accurate warnings. But it's not just about predicting where the cyclone is going. It's about understanding the potential impact. That's where GIS comes in, geographic information systems, those maps we were talking about.
Ones with all the layers of information. Population density, evacuation routes, all that stuff.
Exactly. Those maps help us identify high-risk areas, pre-position relief supplies, even plan evacuations before the cyclone hits. And Odisha has even gone a step further. They've got this mobile app called Setark.
Oh, right, the one that sends out alerts for all kinds of hazards.
That's the one. It's a fantastic tool for keeping people informed, giving them the information they need to stay safe during a cyclone. So you've got those cutting-edge satellites, those detailed maps, and then this really user-friendly app that puts all that information right in people's hands.
It's a great example of how technology, when it's used effectively, can really reduce the impact of a disaster. Did it actually make a difference during a real cyclone?
It did. In 2019, when Cyclone Fani hit, Odisha managed to evacuate over 1 million people. They got them out of those coastal areas, and that saved a lot of lives.
Wow, 1 million people. That's incredible. It proves that investing in technology and disaster preparedness really pays off. It's really encouraging to see that kind of progress.
It is. And as technology keeps advancing, we can expect even more innovation. Things like artificial intelligence, big data analytics, even drones are already making an impact, and they're just going to get more sophisticated.
It's exciting to think about what the future holds for disaster management. But as we wrap up our deep dive, it's important to remember that technology, while powerful, isn't a magic solution.
Absolutely. It needs to be combined with strong leadership, good policies, community engagement, and that ongoing commitment to building a more resilient future.
It's a collective effort,
Yeah.
and we all have a part to play, whether it's staying informed, supporting disaster preparedness initiatives, or even just spreading awareness. Everything we do makes a difference.
Well said. It's been a really interesting discussion, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired, to learn more, get involved, and contribute to making our world a safer place.
Me too. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into technology's role in disaster management. We hope you found it informative and, well, maybe even a little inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe to the deep dive and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.